Dear colleagues, hello once again. We're glad to welcome you to our today's webinar. A few words regarding the event organization. The webinar will be recorded and then posted on our video portal and YouTube channel. You may ask all your questions in the Q&A field. Our today's speaker is Lucas Goncalves, and the topic of his webinar is SAP Integration Tips and Tricks, dealing with SAP integration in our day-to-day. I give the floor to our speaker.
Be welcome, guys. So it's amazing. This is the second session that we are handling, and today we will talk about on how we can apply everything that we took a look on the last session in our day-to-day session, in your day-to-day work. To introduce me, so my name is Lucas Montenegro Gonçalves. I'm in the integration architect from EPAN, working in different fronts. So I came from 15 years working with integration, and I'm here to share a little bit of my acknowledgement with you. To start the agenda of today, so let's review the session plan that we have. We also will talk a little bit of the integration tool timeline, then the ISAM in theory, the ISAM in practice, the interface assessment template that it's a deliverable that we will give to you. We will also have more space for questions, and also to talk about a little bit of the next session that will be focused on the use case and target architecture. Start, right? So last Friday, we have a session related to the overview of integration where we revisit all the technologies that the SAP is offering, and we also deliver an integration learning journey. So please put in the comments what you are thinking about this document. If you already started some trainings, you know, there is a lot of open SAP trainings for free that are really amazing. So please share your experience with this learning journey and you know how you are feeling about those trainings. For today, right? So we will talk about how we apply those technologies that we visit on the last session in our day-to-day tasks. And then, you know, in the end, we will deliver an interface assessment template that it's an idea on how to understand your interface environment, your enterprise interface environment, and then, you know, make clear which tools need to be used or what is the process to define which tools fetch in your requirements. And it's important that, you know, next Friday, right? So it's one of my favorite sessions where we will jump to the real use case, right? So in the first session was an overview. Now we have an idea on how to apply those technologies in a real case. And then next Friday, we will bring a real case where we run this process and we will share some experience on what was wrong, you know, some failures that I had in my past, and of course, some success of target architectures that were proposed. But this is not the end, right? Oh, sorry. And in the end of the next Friday, right? So we will draw 3 books, right? So the first one will be the SAP Integration Suite that resume all the technologies in details, right? Also the SAP Enterprise Messaging book, how to, you know, use the event mesh or how to use this event broken architecture for SAP technologies and non-SAP technologies. And the last one, my favorite book, Domain Drive Design, to support you in those requirements and, you know, to provide the correct solution. But this is not the end, right? So we want to have more sessions like those ones that we are planning. So put on the chat, you know, make questions on what you want to see in the future, maybe to have, you know, sessions only focus on migrations to Integration Suite, or maybe let's talk about the API strategy, how we should apply APIs to the SAP universe, or we can go even deep to talk about this neural edge. So let's maybe run a POC, or let's see how this technology works in practice. New, right? So all questions, independently that if we have a time online, all questions are answered. So please, put your questions in the portal. And, if we don't have time to answer online, you will see that all questions from the last sessions was already answered in an offline way. Also the learning journey, right? So was delivery last time. So please share your inputs, what you are thinking, if you was able to access, if you are liking, and mainly if you think that we should have more sessions for some specific topics. So Lucas, I'm not understanding nothing about API management. So let's have a session about this, maybe with a hands-on session to show in practice how it's work. Let's then start, right? So recap a little bit about the last session. So last session, we talked about the business technology platform, that it's a big platform that SAP is offering with a lot of services, right? So for sure, we should have one session only about this platform, but the idea here is to explain that the SAP have this big suite, and inside of this suite, we have the integration suite, right? And then inside of this integration suite, we have many capabilities or technologies that the SAP offer exactly to handle different patterns and, different requirements that we can receive. So we visit the cloud integration, the API management, the event mesh, and please, if you have any questions, raise to us. Then let's jump a little bit on the ISAM, right? The theory part. So what is this ISAM, right? So the ISAM means Integration Solution Advisory Methodology, right? So if we work anytime in the past together, you probably know that I always try to bring this topic for my projects, because honestly, it's an amazing started point to raise a really valid discussions. But just to have a brief resume, so this was created on 2016 by SAP. So this is a SAP methodology, and in the current moment, it's basically a PowerPoint template that can guide us and support us to shape the integration strategy. Also, it's an amazing starting point to collect the integration styles and patterns to start to understand the overall architecture or integration architecture that you have in your company. And also, one of the most important steps to map your integration services. So which capabilities in terms of integration you have in your company, not only in the technology point of view, but in terms of services. So who will be the routing, who will be, part of the middleware. Also, the last part, or one of the last parts, and for me, one of the most important, you can define your architecture blueprints. So this will be an important step to, really build an integration factor, right? So no one's want to discuss every time with security, with infrastructure, if we can apply a determined solution, right? So based on the blueprints, we can have this overarching agreement in the enterprise level. Other important point, right? So even that is a SAP methodology, it's not a SAP-centric solution. So in many companies, I apply the ISAM, even that the most part of the components are not SAP. So if you're using, for example, Mulisoft, Informatica, Typico, custom solutions, everything can be adapted to be part of the ISAM. And then, the main objective, to really build something reusable and that can be shared with your organization, project, and services. So, Normally in enterprise company, we have projects working parallel that it's not possible for an integration architect being part in all sessions or all discussions or all decisions. So the ESM, it's a good method to share the baseline cross project. And the last one, can be easily adapted and extended. So as I told in the beginning, in my opinion, it's an amazing started point. And then, you can improve with some particularities that you have in your company. Important point, right? So we also visit this page in the last session. So the SAP is planning 5 big moves, and one of those moves it's exactly to provide the integration assessment service, right? So instead of being a template, then will be a platform based on the ESAM, but will be not be only a PPT, will be really a platform where you can run this assessment, inclusive with some self-service, right? So how the business can put the inputs, and have some automatizations regarding this process. Let's talk then about the ESAM, right? So in this moment, the ESAM are in the version 3.4, right? And this is the general structure that we have. So basically, the ESAM, it's split in 7 chapters, and we will visit each one of those chapters to take a look what is handled. So starting by the first one, I think it's the easy one, right? So overview in terms of use. So in this chapter, basically, the SAP brings the main objective or, the main strategies that should be part of the exam. So here we are talking about out-of-box integrations, right? So the SAP offer a lot of plug-and-play integrations, APIs that can be easily adapted to your integration strategy. Open integration, right? So I like this word that the SAP put, exhaustive third-party integration capabilities, because it's true, right? So they provide a lot of third-party connectors. So I see many companies that, they are building those connectors from scratch, and the open integration, it's an important pillar. Another one, it's the holistic integration, right? So what means with holistic integration? It's a methodology that can cover all types of integration patterns. So we can have here process integration, data integration, user integration, think integration, and analytics integration. But Lucas, in my company, I don't have yet think integration. There is no problem, right? So you can skip this pattern and be focused on what your company really have. And the last one, we also talked about this in the last session, right? So the AI-driven integration, for me, it's still in a nutshell. It's something that, it's hard to say artificial intelligence. In some technology or in some steps, we can have something like that. But, it's not like we imagine that, some artificial intelligence will support us, at least not in the current version that we have. Then jumping for the cycle, right? So it's really nice to really visit the cycle, right? So basically we are talking about assess your integration, design your hybrid platform, define integration best practice, and my favorite one, enable a practice of empowerment. Taking a deep look on those in this cycle, basically, to assess your integration. So basically you review your current integration architecture, right? So we'll be focused on areas, for example, building blocks. So how we can exercise the empowerment of building your integration as a factor, and also a use case driving approach, right? So we need to be focused on the use case, what the business needs, and then have a technology agnostic solution. Doesn't matter if it will be MuleSoft or it will be SAP Integration Suite. The most important is to solve, to deliver a solution that really fits in the use case. Then you come for design your hybrid integration platform. So basically, after to understand the use case patterns that you have, you can, deliver integration guidelines reflecting the customer context. I know that in this moment, maybe it's too much high level, but you will see that during the presentation, we will go into the detail and we are understanding the concept. The third phase is to define the integration best practice, right? So this is also a really important task. So based on your use case patterns and your integration capabilities, you can define your architecture blueprints, and then you can have a cross validation. How I handle APIs in my organization, which type of security aspects, and then, independently of the type of demand that we have, we apply this blueprint to proceed. Also, it's important to have, a concrete decision table, right? So in many scenarios, I see that multiple integration architects are working in different demands and taking a completely different solutions, right? So in some case, one architect preferred to use PO. In another case, another guy preferred to use MuleSoft. And then, we have a completely different solution. So with ISAM, you organize this. So for this pattern, based on this decision criteria and key characteristics, we need to follow the same path. And then, the last one, enable the practice of the empowerment, right? So this is a really important step, because why we need IT to do everything related to integration, right? So the main objective with this pillar is to democratize the integration delivery, empowering the business, via self-service platforms, establishing developer communities, and even new papers, for example, the Integration Citizen, to empower this business, for example, to be responsible for the API contracts, or, to make some tasks in the integration layer. Too much theory. Let's start to go to the detail. So those pillars are also focused on the integration maturity, right? So the level 0, it's a non-systematic integration, a completely ad hoc solution, right? So demands are coming, each one are leading as they want. And then we jump for the integration strategy. So we already have a mature integration strategy. We know how to handle integrations in the hybrid environment. We define our best practice, and in the end, we delivered this empowerment together with the business to have a real community together. Now, jumping to the real ISAM. So this is the basically workflow for the ISAM, right? So the analysis of the ISAM is start with the integration domains. Sorry, we will visit each one of those steps, but to have a brief introduction, first you map the domains, then you have the integration styles and use case patterns, and in the end, we have your integration technology mapping. So for this moment, remember those words: domains, integration styles, use case patterns, and integration technology mapping. Now let's jump for the first one, integration domains, right? So the SAP bring this picture to us as a standard to help us to define the possible domains that we have, right? So the SAP classify cloud, on-premise, think, and user, right? So those are the main domains that we have, and the combination of those host points, we have the domains. So we can have the user to cloud when we want to establish, for example, application integration with your cloud environment, or you can have your user to on-premise, on-premise to on-premise, and this will be the baseline in the SAP point of view to start to define your integration layer. I have some concerns about this approach, but we will talk about this in the ISAM in practice, that it's the next chapter. After that, just a minute, we will have the integration styles and use case patterns, right? So basically the SAP brings something like a 5+1, right? Why 5+1? Because by standard we can have a 5, so process integration, that it's basically, you know, a chain business process across business applications. Data integration, so how synchronize data, a high volume of data between business applications. Analytics integration, so how to deliver, you know, analytics integrations for different solutions. User integration, that will be basically you know, apps and, you know, how users can have integrations with your applications. And think integration, that is basically how to integrate things with your enterprise. Then we come to the mapping, where we have the integration styles here, right? So it's exactly the same that we was looking before, and we start to go deep in the use case patterns, right? What I mean with that, so you can have a process integration, but inside of the process integration, you have a specific use case patterns. For example, application to application, or master data integration, or the classic B2B or B2G. So depending of the necessity of your company, you can have a more difference, you know, or, you know, you need to build this based on your company requirements. And this is for all, right? So data integration, you can have data replication, data orchestration. You know, for users, you can have a UI, mobile, chatbot. Think integration, it's the same. And then you can see now why I'm saying that it's 5+1, because we have the classic ones, process, data analytics, user, and think, but we have also one named cross use case, right? So the cross use case will be patterns that can be applied in any one of the integration styles. I know it's starting to be complicated, but I promise that will be really worse. Here is one example of, you know, use case patterns for process integration. We have application to application. So basically, you know, two applications exchange information. You can have, for example, master data integration, where you need to replicate your data via multiple applications. B2B, where we have, you know, a really specific protocols and ways to leverage your integrations. You know, we have EDFAC, X12, you know, OFTP. So it's a really peculiar. And we can also have, for example, B2G, how to talk with the government, you know, how to establish this, mainly because in many moments the government have also specific points. In the end, we have a mapping, an integration pattern mapping. So you have your integration domains, on-premise to on-premise, on-premise to cloud, and your integration styles. And then based on your specific requirements for your company, you can map which one of those cases are valid, which one of those cases really exist, to then jump to the next level. So it's really important that, you know, you make this exercise because, for example, maybe in your company, you don't have nothing related to think, right? So there is no problem on that. So you don't need to have all this table fulfilled. And you know, a good example for cross use case, as we talked, it's something that can be used in any pattern. So in this point, I bring the API as an example, because you know, we can have APIs for all types of domains. It can be on-premise to on-cloud, on-premise to on-premise, you know, APIs, microservices are things that can be applied in any type of domains or integration styles. Technology mapping, right? So now that we understand the domains, the integration styles, and the use case patterns, we have the capabilities of our integration technologies, and it's possible to map. So I have a process integration. I have my process integration from application to application. And in terms of capabilities, I decide that for this pattern, I need to use a integration platform as a service. I want to use the integration suite because the capabilities of this tool fulfill my requirements. It's important again, you know, to highlight that can be SAP and non-SAP. So here the SAP already bring agnostic terms, so can be any ESB, any integration platform has a service, so it's a completely agnostic concept. Then, you know, we have something that, you know, I also decided to bring that, you know, the differentiation between integration layer and application layer, right? So we have this classic discussion that, you know, we don't try to bring business logic inside of the integration layer. And this is also an important mindset to keep. So the SAP, for example, bring the AEF, the application interface framework that support in some specific case. For example, dynamic code list. So let's say that, you know, you have some interface with one specific value mapping that can change a lot. So instead of bring this mapping to the integration layer, it's advised to put in the application layer because then it's more close to the business and they can maintain it as they want. Then in the end, we have a decision table, right? Because as I talked, we cannot have decisions based on the Lucas feeling or, you know, in one specific integration architect. So with this decision table, we can really understand which technologies we have in the company, what are the type of recommendations that we have, and also, you know, in terms of domains, where we suggest or where we recommend to use each one of those components. Then we have the interface assessment that the SAP bring the idea that I also have some concerns. We will see this on how to apply these in practice, that it's basically, you know, to define your domain, define your business scenario, apply your interface decomposition, then, you know, map your integration styles and use case patterns metrics, and then base it on your decision table, you can select the proper tool to attend this. So this is the original idea of the interface assessment that the SAP brings to us. In the end, you know, we have the blueprints, right? So we have the integration domains, integration use case patterns, and then we jump for the blueprint. So how to attend in the technical point of view end-to-end integrations, right? So here I bring one example of a blueprint, right? So in this case, I have a process integration, A to A, application to application, from on-premise to cloud, right? So we have the main characteristics of this integration, and we have the blueprint of the components. Why I really like this idea to have the blueprints, because after to have this level of maturity, I can bring those blueprints, for example, to the security team to see, guys, do you agree that this type of integration can happen, the position of the firewall, which type of security tuner we need to apply, or which reverse proxy we need to use, because you know the SAP Integration Suite, for example, can work with any type of reverse proxy, so you don't need to always use SAP technology to reach on-premise technology. Then, you know, in terms of blueprint, we also have the details, right? So what is the description, the involved technology products, when to apply, how to apply, right? So here it's nice that you can put, for example, technical guidance, configurations, tutorials, anything that can support your team to apply this blueprint. I also brought some blueprint, for example, related to data integration, right? So you can see that it's the same pattern. The different, it's the tools, right? So you can have a different tools to support different patterns and with the same objective. Let's validate this with the product owners, with the domain owners, with other architects, with security, infrastructure, and you know you can go as deep you want, right? So I brought two simple blueprints, but you know we can have things like more complex. So in this case, how you can combine APIs with custom applications, working also with event mesh, you know, with event brokers, with publish and subscribed, how to organize these this scenario in a way that everyone can be satisfied with the solution. Let's then jump to the last one, right? So the last one, it's more focused for the integration rules and governance. And what is the idea of this chapter, right? So the idea of this chapter, in my point of view, is to exercise this discussion internally, right? So the idea is to build an integration center of excellence, mainly with the objective to enable governance and the proof of concept. You know, in the integration strategy, hybrid integration platforms, integration best practice, make the assessment on the blueprints that are being defined, and also, you know, empower some points like a community, right? So integration developers, system integrators, applications developers, and also one important concept, right, guys? A self-service integration based. This is one of the most nice topics that the ISAM brought, that how we can offer to our business self-service mindsets to support us. You know, nothing that we need to be stuck on meetings or anything like that. So let's empower our guys to do this. The SAP also bring the idea on how this center of excellence can, for example, ensure the quality of the process in the integration development. So, for example, a questionnaire based, owned by the integration center of excellence. So, for example, to confirm if the mandatory requirements are happening, or you know, questions about deliverables, if the best practices are being applied. So the idea is to really to have this community. So it's not about to burn colleagues, but it's more to coach them to be in the same level and looking for the same focus. And the result, can be a report that, you can exactly measure the maturity of your integration team or integration community. And the SAP also bring to us some possible positions, right? So the enterprise architect, I think this is also well known. So will be a guy more focused on the overall IT strategy. We have the integration architect, a guy more focused on a specific technology service. Also the integration developer, more focused to implement those scenarios, and the integration administrator, the guy that will set up the environment and support, for example, certificates, archiving. In my time, this were more what this guy was called basis, but I'm old, so basis guys don't exist more. Now they are infrastructure architects or any fancy name that we have in the market now. We also have some positions that are more focused on the business or really in this empowerment of users. So basically, the domain architect, the domain expert, or the domain architect that will be more specific for business requirements, will be a guy that really understands the business and can also make this mapping with the interface word. We have the business user, right? In the end, everything it's related to the business users, how we can improve their work. Then integration citizen or citizen integrator, that it's a new position that the SAP is bringing, that already have this position outside of SAP, but the SAP reinforced the importance to have this guy, that it's basically someone in the business side, also with some ability to execute some tasks independently of IT. So as I brought, we have example for the API contract or the Swagger, right? So if we have a citizen integrator, this guy can be, for example, responsible to build this contract in a no-code level and then share with IT to be published. And because in the end, the business is responsible for the data, right? For the API, the product team is responsible for that. And then, the application or API developer that, will be a guy more focused for a specific API scenarios. So far, guys, how we are, please raise your questions about the theory. It's a lot of things, right? So the template of the exam will be available. It's available to make the download. So take a look. And in this moment, we will jump more in the exam in practice, right? So I'm working with this methodology, have some years, and my idea is to share some thoughts. But please keep in mind that the SAP is already working in the next version to really deliver a tool, a platform that support us. So what I bring to start this discussion, right? So the first point, domain, right? So domain, when the SAP delivered this methodology in 2016, domain was something that really makes sense, right? So the cloud adoption was starting, and this topic was always being discussed with a different team. And now, for example, domains are starting to don't make a really sense, right? So if your company already have a mature level of cloud adoption, and starting to work with private cloud, or you are starting to miss this concept of what is cloud, what is on-premise, then my suggestion is don't be stuck in this domain point. Also, more and more cross-use case become the main objective of the company. So everyone want to use event-based APIs. So be careful to don't put everything as a cross-use case. So event-based are not applicable for everything. APIs don't solve all the pains. So I already worked in companies where they decided to, skip all patterns and only keep the cross-use case. So please don't do this. Also, the interface assessment process that the SAP bring, in my opinion, it's a little bit generic, right? So don't make clear the steps and the deliveries of these important steps. So I will also bring some idea on how you can handle that. And the other point that I always face in different companies, right? So only the standard template of the exam have 150 slides, right? So it's a huge template. So after filling with your customer specific points, can easily reach to 250, 350 slides, and then become a huge document that no one's like to use, or no one's like to visit a PowerPoint with 300 slides. Start to be not really, start to not really add value. But we need to keep the eyes on the main advantage, right? So it's a really excellent point to start to build your integration strategy. And for me, the most important, it's a real base to start to discussions regarding integration governance, self-service, empowerment of the business users. So it's a really nice methodology. I also bring some specific lessons learned about each one of those topics, right? So we already talked about the domains. Please don't be stuck in on-premise and on cloud. I already worked in companies where they decided to have instead on-premise and on cloud. They mix it for something named core, that it's basically on-premise and in private clouds. And then they have a public clouds being handled in different styles. Then again this point about events, so be aware that you cannot make all patterns as cross use case, and also discuss internally the difference between process integration and data integration. In many companies, I see that those two concepts or those two patterns have confusion, right? So if I have a master data integration, it is a process integration or it's a data integration. Depends, right? So if you are talking about integrate one business partner, then will be a process integration. If you are talking that every day you need to synchronize a bunch of list of business partners, then start to become a data integration. Technology mapping, right? So this decision table, it's a key point, right? So we really need to avoid that different projects or different architects take different decisions. So really spend some time to build a really rich decision table, to try to cover the most part of the points. The last one, the next one, interface assessment, right? So I already talked that's a little bit generic. So try to bring your experience, try to bring your characteristics to this process to enhance this process. The next one, integration blueprint. So please, go really deep in this chapter, right? So a strong advice to validate your blueprint with many guys that you can, right? So the many guys that you can have in your company, really, you know, deep sessions with infrastructure. With infrastructure, with other business architects, with all of that, you know, so really be focused on that. And in the last one, you know, the integration rules and governance, for me, in the current version, it's a quite brief, right? So it's a too much high level, but you know, it's extremely important point because it's looking for the future, right? So the future is to empower the users, you know, so it's try to build this community to empower the guys around you. And you know, also some important points about the general overall, you know, the overall. So not only about the specific chapters. So the first one, always I suggest to incorporate these in your integration strategy, right? So don't try to make this template has your integration strategy, but in a different position, right? So try to bring the exam to your integration strategy. Another point, you know, translate your exam in a cheat sheets, right? So again, a document with 250 pages, it's impossible to be used. You know, you see many complaints and there is a high chance that you will stop to use or then will be discommitted. You know, you have informations that are not updated. So split the exam in chapters, you know, focus on a specific audience and try to build those cheat sheets, you know, to be easily to digest. 30 points, this it's a completely collaborative methodology, so it's really important that you invite different teams to be part of this process and, you know, to really bring value to the business. So don't build this methodology in a nutshell or, you know, in a cave. Point number 5, you know, keep the exam or your integration strategy up to date, right? So it's really important. In many companies I joined that saying, Lucas, I have it, but it's not updated, you know, was created 5 years ago. So it's basically a document that cannot be used. And the last one, you know, promote exam, right? So share your integration strategy around your company, you know, make external and internals aware of this point, you know, to avoid constantly deviations or debits. And the last one, you know, be part of the community, right? So I don't know if you follow Catherine, but at least, you know, Catherine, for me, it's the main person related to exam. I know that there is other names, but follow her in the LinkedIn or, you know, in any social media, because she always brings amazing topics. Also, there is a link. So if you want to join the community, you can also mail this SAP to be part of the jam. I promise that, you know, we are starting to go to the end and we will have space for questions. Now I'm trying to build, or I'm trying to make sense on how to apply all this methodology in a practical way, right? So we have a demand, right? So the business come to you and say, Lucas, I need to integrate the S/4HANA with the system B. Then we have the interface assessment, right? And how as we was talking before, how we build this interface assessment. So basically coming from the really high level, we have a principles, we have a mission, we have a vision. You know, the company want to be agile, want to be time to market. Then we translate it in the overall strategy. And then, you know, we become an integration strategy, because coming from this overall strategy, each one of your pillars, I don't know, BI, development, infrastructure, will have their own strategies. And then the integration strategy can be based on the ISAM, in future roadmaps, but also in Gartner, in best practice, you know, in external input. So anything that can really support you in this process. And then in the end, you have your decision table, where, you know, will support you to have the decision. Then you have your blueprint, and then it's important to have also this process where, you know, you go to dev and test ops, but frequently can happen in the integration blueprint, something named technical and architecture debates. What I want to mean with that, many times we can have demands, we can propose blueprints based on the integration strategy, but this will not really fit into to solve the demand, right? So let's take one example. FTP, right? So many companies come to me and say, Lucas, I don't want to have FTP integrations, physical files integrations. What to do in this scenario, right? So in my integration strategy, I have a point saying that FTP is not allowed, but many times demands come saying that, you know, the system B can only integrate via files. What to do in this case? You can have a technical or architecture debate. So you can discuss, for example, to open an exception, to open, you know, any type of discussion to allow this type of discussion. Makes sense, guys? I know that this process of demand to solution, it's more complex, so this was just an example, but please share your questions, you know, your ideas also about this process, and we can discuss about this. So in terms of interface assessment, right? So going more detail, comparing what the SAP bring, and also bringing a proposal that I have. So the SAP bring this idea to have the business scenario, interface decomposition, and then, you know, you can have your based on decision table, your exactly solution or metrics decision. I bring something a little bit different. So my idea is to have first an integration interview where based on simple questions you can understand the requirement of this integration. Then you can map it in your styles and use case. Then in the end, in the next step, I like to have a cross evolution. So for example, to cross check the total cost of the ownership, the impact on trainings, on support, or even in other projects, right? So imagine that you receive a demand to create an API for invoice, but you already have other projects running in parallel, exactly building those type of APIs. So you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So it's important to, in my opinion, to also have this cross check on what is going in another project. In the end, we have the assessment result that, you know, it's basically where the integration architect, you know, will provide the solution, you know, or the proposal solution that, you know, it's based the blueprint, you know, the error handling, the interface flow, the security, possibilities to be reused, or for example, out-of-box scenarios that can be applied. In any other comment, you know. So this template, you know, this idea of interface assessment, it's exactly what we will share with you, you know. So it's basically a spreadsheet where you can map all those steps to make the assessment. So this is something that I'm constantly improving. So, you know, if you have any idea, let me know and we can improve it together. Last 2 slides, guys, and then we jump for the questions. So this is often happening in my life that, you know, we as a solution architects or maybe technical architects, we jump too much in the technical solutions and we skip to look for some key points that, you know, sooner or late will come to you. So basically, you know, total cost of the ownership. So we always need to keep this term in mind when we decided to suggest some solution. So what is the total cost of the ownership? So it's the cost that we have related to the initial cost, the operational, the maintenance, the downtime, the production. So in terms of integration, what is the cost of your license? How much it's the cost of your maintenance with your partner, with your infrastructure? What is the cost to build new integrations? Also keep in mind 2 important terms, CapEx and OpEx, right? Sometimes it's hard to have these points handled in the integration level, but you need to keep this in mind, right? So what is the CapEx? What is the money that you will put one time? And OpEx, what is the constantly money that you need to put for your solutions? And this is applicable in any type of comparison, right? So, Lucas, what is better, Mulisoft or SAP? Or what is better, SAP or build a custom solution? And everything depends of the scenario that you have. I try to bring an exercise, you know, it's a really high level. So it's just to have one idea of the impact of this. So let's say that, you know, you are checking the possibility to compare the usability of the integration suite with a custom solution. So Lucas, I don't know, I'm a industrial company. I have a really strong IT team and we are able to build a custom solution based on, I don't know, Spring Boot, Java, or any new technology. And then you start to make the analysis of the total cost of your ownership. And the first point that I always see, it's license, right? So Lucas, SAP Integration Suite, Mulisoft, Informatica, it's expensive, right? So the money that I need to pay every month, it's a pain. And looking for my custom solution, it's almost zero, right? Because everything is built. And if you only look for this point, it's easily to jump for a custom solution. But my idea with this topic is to be more aware, you know, more smart on the topics that we have. So for example, maintenance, right? So maintenance, if you compare, the SAP Integration Suite has an enterprise integration platform, has a service, already have this maintenance point being covered by SAP. In a custom solution, you should handle all of that. Or for example, development, right? So for SAP Integration Suite, you need to be focused on the development of your integrations. For the custom solutions, over the integrations, you need to build everything related to your custom solutions. So monitoring, you know, adapters, everything needs to be developed. Then you can also think about infrastructure, right? So SAP, it's a integration platform, has a service. So this license already cover part of this cost. And also, you know, for the custom solution, for sure, your cost is higher. And then you can even go deeper, right? So HR cost. So of course, you need to have a consultant, you know, you need to have architects, but for custom solutions, you need to have a more infrastructure teams. You need to have a DevOps, you know, the papers of a custom solutions can be even higher. So this is one idea, right? So if you are only looking for license, normally those white labels tools, MuleSoft, Integration Suite, we always lose, but it's important to have an overview of these total cost of ownership to make sense. And also the risks, right? So custom solutions are based on technologies that make sense today, but in a short future, everything can change. And also the turnover, right? So at least I live it in my past situations where companies build a huge custom solutions for a middleware layer, and after some years, the head of architecture or some key architects leave the company, and no one's really understand the concept or the components of this custom solution. So you need to be aware of all those points before to suggest some solutions for your company. Then the last topic, return of investment, right? So this will be really briefly. For sure, we could go really deep in this topic, but mainly is to understand what is the money that you are putting in the solution and how this money come back to your company, right? So does it make sense for me to suggest something that it's only a dream, but don't bring a real value for the company? And in integration point of view can be hard, right, to have a exactly number, but you can have a tangibles return of investment. So for example, reduction of license, reduction of maintenance, but you can also have intangible return of investment. So you are increasing your security, reducing the number of errors, using the out-of-box, bringing more flexibility, scalability, reusability. So those are also analyses that you need to have before to propose a solution. Too much complex, guys? I hope not. I hope that I was able to make this topic a little bit more easy and funny. But again, sorry to be repetitive, but my salary is based on the questions that you raise. So please send me a lot of questions because, I need to pay my rent. The last question, right? So there is no silver bullet, right? So one size doesn't fit to all. Each company have a specific requirements, specific, scenarios, and has integration architects. We need to be able to understand those requirements and guide our company for the best solution. Jumping for, the last point, the delivery for today will be the interface assessment. We already talked about this, so we will share with you a spreadsheet, an Excel template where you can play a little bit on all those stages and, improve, enhance, and prepare something specific for your company. And of course, wait till the SAP delivery, this automated tool that I already hearing that will come soon. Then in this middle time you can use this template. This one, right? So the integration assessment service, it's coming, and will solve also this pain. Questions, please. I hope that I'm not alone.
Yeah, we have some questions in the Q&A field.
Good. Nice. So, hi everyone. Okay, this is from you, Hannah. Can you please share the link of Open SAP training? Of course, I will paste when we are offline. I will share with you the link, but it's basically open.sap.com. Easy. Talk about SAP Hybrids well one day. Of course we can talk, right? So I just came from one project with hybrids where we migrated from SAP, because now it's not more hybrids, right? It's the SAP Commerce. So yes, for sure we can have another session only focus on hybrids. Will be really nice. Congratulations, thank you. Where can I find a complete methodology, right? So the completely methodology, it's available on the SAP website. I will also paste it in this question, then you can follow this template that the SAP share. So it's basically this template, and you can use in your company. Okay, so where data validation should happen, what would you recommend? Good question, right? So if we are talking about a business validation, right? So to make sense if those fields can be sent or not, I suggest to put this validation on the as close to the business as possible. So maybe in this AF. But if you are talking, for example, of a structure validation, can be splitted, right? So can be in the AF or near to the SAP or near to the sender system to validate it before to send the message, but also can happen in the AF. Data validation in AF, if possible, yes. So for sure it's possible, right? So we have one slide where we compare exactly those two functionalities, right? So data validation can happen. So you can have, for example, structure mapping, value mapping, data validation in both, and always depends on which type of data validation you are talking about. Sorry, are we talking about SAP Integration Solution Advisor? Yes, we are talking about this methodology, and this was the focus for the topic today. Indeed. Could you generalize this IAM again? What is for it? Okay, so this may be my fault. So the IAM, basically it's the methodology that will support you to understand your current scenario, right? So looking for this cycle, right? So the IAM, it's a methodology that will support you to assess your integration, so what you have, which type of requirements, domains you have. Then you design your hybrid integration platform. You know how you attend, or you know how to merge, how to map those requirements with the technologies that you have. And then you can define your best practice, you can have your blueprint, and in the end, you can enable the empowerment of your user with some actions based, for example, on self-service, or delegating some tasks to the business team. I hope that I was clear. If not, Sergey, send me a message and we can talk again. Nice. Now comes a nice question. When is this methodology do customer wish preference about choosing technology? Let's see. There is a leaning towards using open source technology like Apache Camel Bootstrap instead of some permanent question. Yeah, this is 1 million questions, right? That we need to balance, right? So, in one hand, the client is always right, but we need to guide them to the right solution, right? So depends a lot of the type of solution, of the type of the customer that you have. So how I like to say, right? So maybe if you are a company with, I don't know, a more simple environment, maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 applications talking between each other, this can be a good option to proceed with Apache Camel, Spring Boot, or Kafka in a customized way. But when we started to go in a really huge levels, of enterprise systems with 1,000 and 1,000 of applications to be integrated, build a custom integration platform as a service or a completely open source, I have my concerns, right? But this is my opinion, right? So I came from a company that, build exactly those type of open source technologies and really works, right? So really depends on the characteristics of the company and the main risks that you can see. Usually, I suggest to go to white labels, to integration platform as a service, because, we already know that it will work. We already have support from companies. We have a success case. The learning curve is lower. The risks embedded in white labels are lower, but of course, the cost sometimes it's higher. Lucas requesting hands-on on-premise, CPI on-premise, the Edge, right? So what's the name? It's so new that Neuro Edge. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. If it's possible, I would like to click more times in this like button because I was already thinking on that. So for sure, let's plan this session to talk about this Neuro Edge and how to apply this in practice. Good structure representation. Thank you a lot. Prashant, what would be the preferred technology if you are decision maker in case of on-premise to cloud or cloud to on-premise? When CPI on-premise come to the picture? Sorry, good question, right? So in many cases, I was the decision maker for this type of discussions, and really depends, right? So I'm sorry to always bring this depends. I hate this point. I'm usually a really directly guy, but depends. So if you already have a team, let's bring you some points that make me exercise this. Think that you have a team that already have experience in Mulisoft, right? You already find, I don't know, a proper or a better proposal in terms of license from Mulisoft, or you have a lot of SAP systems in your environment, and you can really use the out-of-box scenarios to empower your solutions. So all of those points need to be put in comparison. And in this type of solutions, I always recommend to run software selection, right? So put those guys to fight. So as a customer, you have this privilege to put consultants to fight, and you can observe and select what best fits for your company, and what bring more value to your business. I hope I answer your question, my friend. Could you compare migration cockpit versus data service? This is for sure a topic for one session, right? So the migration cockpit, it's a tool. Basically, when we talk about SAP migrations, right? So we are talking about guys from SAP ERP to S4. So a company today it's living in the ERP and wants to go to the S4. The SAP brings mainly two options, right? So, or two main strategies. The first one, it's use the migration cockpit. So the migration cockpit, it's a tool that SAP delivery to easily migrate from ERP, extracting the data from your ERP and uploading it in your new S4. This is beautiful, right? But if you have, for example, data cleaning, data enhancement, mapping, or if you need, to make a lot of logics before to have your upload in your new system, in your S4, the data service can support you on this, right? So the data service, the migration cockpit, it's a tool only focused to migrate one system to another, and the SAP data service can support in this type of situation, but also supporting our daily tasks. So mainly, for example, for data integration, right? So data integration, it's a pattern that can be solved by data service. I hope I answered your question. If not, put again, Lucas, was not clear. Let's have another session about that. Bunch of useful metro. Thank you a lot. We will share all of this with you guys, and please use it. How can be sure then replicate iDocs from MDG to S4 to get iDoc in case of network interruption? Could you compare migration copy? This is an amazing question, right? So it's nice that the questions are really putting me in a tricky situation. So iDocs, first let's talk a little bit about iDocs, right? So I'm quite concerned about iDocs, right? So they are huge. Many times they are slow. I know that many guys love iDocs because it's a really standard and it's a really nice technology to use. But in this example, for example, to replicate data from MDG to S4HANA and have the iDoc AIL. So what is this AIL? It's basically, the return to saying that the message was sent with success. In this case, you can have a middle if you're talking about data replication, huge number of data, then will be a tricky situation if you have a circuit break, right? So the name of this network interruption will be part of the pattern of the circuit break, and we can have many solutions for that, right? So you can have a middleware that popping up saying that the S4HANA is out. You can have like a parallel integrations checking if the S4HANA is available before to synchronize the data. You can use, for example, the data service to support you in this data synchronization. So already working companies that use the data service exactly for this type of scenario. So I have, for example, one global S4 and federative master data governance, so one global S4HANA and one MDG for Germany, Spain, localized MDG. So the data service or even the SLT can be used to synchronize the data. But a circuit break, it's amazing discussion that, for sure we need to go deep, but I try to explain you some points or some options. 7 minutes, I think we can cover those two ones. +1 to your money commitment in the chat that will contribute to your salary increase as requested you experience spend. +1 to your money commitment. Thank you. Great question, right? So yes, I already worked in many companies like this, right? So they have Mulisoft and SAP Integration Suite, or even internally, they have SAP Integration Suite and the SAP PO. It's hard, right? Because you will need to keep the eyes on the total cost of the ownership, right? Because normally when you have two ESBs working in the same patterns, that means that you are spending money without necessity, or you're trying to only attend a specific requirements. But yes, in the ESAM can identify this type of things, but you need to have a decision table really well defined, right? So if you have two SBs fighting from each other, you need to identify which characteristics of each integration solution need to be used in each pattern. If it's not possible, this is already a highlight that you are spending too much time or unnecessary money in this type of in the integration layer. Next two ones, exactly one scenario for that. It's a roadmap for CPI, right? So exactly one scenario for that. It's a roadmap for CPI. Not only, right? So the CPI can work with exactly ones, right? So it's one important pattern, but I also highlight in the CPI the possibility to really work with those out-of-box scenarios, right? So to provide a capability for all those type of integrations and to support you. So it's a really important tool that can also work with exactly ones. Then I think the last one was already answered by Hannah, and I have other two last slides to talk a little bit about the next session, right? So the next session we'll talk about real demands, right, guys? Real demands. So what was applicable with success? What was lessons learned? Let's talk a lot about blueprints, and we will draw those three books, you know, Integration Suite, in SAP Enterprise Message, that, you know, my big friend Ricardo Viana was part of, you know, was one of the writers of these books. And, you know, domain drive design, that, you know, it's something that I suggest that all of us take a look, because it's a really nice topic. Over that, I think I cover all the points that I prepared, and just to say thank you for all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much to our speaker for an interesting speech. As it's already been said, we will send you the video recording via messages. And thank you everyone for your participation, and have a nice day.
Bye.